Welcome to a new edition of Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with soul empowerment coach Birgitta Visser. She is a Dutch mutt living the good life with her dog, a black mutt she rescued from the streets of Florida. She's traveled the world rather extensively, having moved more times than her age, as being somewhat of a nomad in her blood. She's held down many a job, from being a model, bartender, promo girl, dog walker, healer, web designer, created her own organic soap line, designed jewelry, taught many holistic workshops, and maneuvered herself to holding a demanding job in the corporate industry. Today, she is a pro at surfing the cosmic dimensional waves across the multiverse, delivering the many messages she receives from the collective of light beings, ascended masters, archangels, and galactics, in the hope that people will awaken to what life is all about. She's a fascinating interview. Enjoy. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I think before we get into your life with healing and light empowerment and everything that you do, how did you survive COVID? How did you make it through the 2-year period that we just went through? And how did that subsequently change not only the way that you live your life, but the way that you conduct business?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I haven't had a TV in a long time, so I don't really live in that 3D reality, so to speak, right? But it changed me in a different way. I think that's when I started to finish writing my book, and I reflected so much on the world and everything that was happening, but I also, traveled inward and did a lot more healing. And for me, to me, COVID is something positive. I call it's a label. Everything is a label. But it's something positive, right? Because people have this fear of dying, right? But isn't it really, they have a fear of dying, but they also have a fear of living. So which is it? And to me, we're all energy. And it was just, I've never had any issues. But then I am very aware. And I know exactly when my body shuts down or something is wrong. And I go in for a healing session with a great healer called Louise Rhodes, and she does it virtual. And no matter what pains I've got, it's after one session, it's gone. And of course, I started doing my meditation practice again, so that really helped. But I think for me overall, it was very positive. It made me realize what I wanted to do in life, because you had to stand still. And some people, yes, I work like crazy, especially in the corporate world. I work 50 to 60 hours a week. But everything that I aspire to become is now happening.
That's wonderful. And I think I hear that more and more about this time period. It's almost as though people are a little hesitant to be as positive about it, but I think there's a lot that happened with the world slowing down, recalibrating where you're at and what you want to do. And with everything that you are and that you do, I want to not simplify what you do, but make it easy for people to understand. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. One of the kids looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you explain it?
There are two things. Like I said, I'm in the corporate work. I work in oil and gas standardization. And the other part is that spiritual part where I inspire people to become their most authentic selves. And that is a word, Joe, that's overused. Like, what's authentic? Well, what does it even mean? It means that you accept one another. First of all, you accept one another. And that's where the soul empowerment, because I'm a soul empowerment coach. So it says it in the wording. Yeah. I empower people to return to a love for their own soul, so to speak. And it's really about accepting one another and inspiring one another without judgment, because people have so many opinions, and that's the ego talking. But it's just simply learning to listen, learning to communicate from the heart, and living from the heart rather than from the mind, the analytical mind, and just accepting one another, embracing one another like the brothers and sisters we are.
I think that's the thing that I've found really refreshing about doing podcasting, is that it's opened up a portal in me to understand so many people like you that are doing such wonderful work. And I think it is very powerful for all of us to put our walls down and to accept each other and to find that that middle, that soul that we all have.
Absolutely. And for me, especially the last couple of years, my labels are gone. I have no shame. I have no fear, because why should we have that? That's society that's created that. And because of everything that I went through, I carried that with me. And I pretty much, I did so many things. I was in toxic relationships. I dabbled in drugs. I starved myself. I was in the abusive modeling industry. But, all of that, I look back and I'm like, I'm so thankful for everything that I went through, because how can I not be? We go through trauma, and we can either sit in that victimhood, or we decide that, we want a better life, and we work on ourselves, because ultimately we are responsible for our own lives.
So let's go back to the beginnings of your life. Talk to me a little bit about how your childhood, everything starts in the beginning. How did these seeds and these pieces of curiosity begin for you to get to where you're at right now?
So when I start back to my childhood, well, I always say, it's quite funny. I always say we're all star seeds, right? We're all from the stars, so to speak. And I call it we're pods. We're seeds in a pod, soul in a bod. But I was abused as a child. I think I was like 10, 11, and it wasn't my dad. It was by a friend of the family. But back in the 80s, life was very, very different. It's not like it is now, where people are far more open. And so the thing is, I kept that inside of me. And so I had a couple of run-ins with some other very pervy men in Malaysia, where I grew up. I actually grew up in Singapore, Malaysia. But, when you don't heal that trauma, you create another bit of trauma, because that toxicity stays within you, that negative energy, that fear and everything stays within you. And so it snowballed, because I was bullied at school when we returned to Holland, because I was so skinny. And people wanted to copy my homework. I remember going to camp camping in Belgium, and one of the very popular kids just pulled me in front of the class, right, in the middle of the woods, and grabbed my arms and was just like, oh, look how skinny she is. But normally, the bullies don't even remember that they did that, because years later, he was saying to me, I don't even remember doing that to you. And, my dad died when I was 14. I just turned 14, and he had coronary heart disease. And he was somebody who he thought he could cure himself. He was very, very spiritual. So he wasn't balanced, so to speak, because he also had a family to take care of. And my mom did a fabulous job, because she started out with a debt. We wore secondhand clothes. We got appointed a council flat. My grandmother and her partner then some furniture. So it was very, I was glad when high school was over. And then I decided to give the modeling a go. And that didn't pan out very well for me, because I have thick skin. And when I was 16, my mom put me on a course, a modeling course, because I was walking like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Seriously. My confidence was at an all-time low. I was very good at throwing out my sandwiches at school. And I was just so insecure. And this hairdresser at this course saw me, and he wanted me to do a hair show. And I thought, oh, great, why not? I did. But he chopped up my long hair, and I had a pixie haircut. I can tell you, Joe, I was horrified. I looked horrible. So that didn't do me any favors. But, I tried. I gave the modeling a go. But even there's so much abuse. And, I was abused there. And, stylists and makeup artists and photographers, they just fill you up. And when you're in that world, you just don't quite know what to do. And I know a lot of models that slept around just to get a job. I was not part of that, because I didn't even understand men. I just didn't. I think my first relationship, I was 21 and a half. And I was terrible. I was a green bean. They scared me. And but all my relationships have been toxic. And it took me until 2009, between 2007 2009 to start the work on truly healing myself, because one of my exes, he was such a beautiful reflection to my then very, very naive soul. And he was a crack addict. Something I didn't even know. Yes, I dabbled in drugs. Yes, I could have killed myself, but my stepdad died in 2000 because I was going out with people that really had my best interest in me. But then they were broken just as much as I was broken. There were learning curves between many E's one night, and I had a memory loss. I was sweating, and having sex with me is not a good idea because I wasn't even in my body. That's how bad it was. And I did tell my mom words, and the first thing she asked me, and this is back in 2000, she said, "Birgitta, are you still using?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm not." Just, after 3 months, I just went, boom, I don't want this anymore. But fast forward, and this guy lived with me in Holland. He was from the States, and so he was a crack addict. He was dealing with the Crips in Holland, and it was mind-blowing for me. I've never seen someone on crack. Stuff of mine was pawned. I tried to help him get into rehab because he really wanted to get better, but then he was held for ransom by the Crips in Holland, and I helped the police save him, and the Crips threatened to kill me. But my mom had taken me out of Holland in the space of literally 2 or 3 days, packed everything up, didn't have much, and I started my life from scratch again in the UK. And Mark was deported back to the US. Yeah. So these are some of the things. But I look back. I know he's making amends now, but it's funny because sometimes we try to save people, but what we don't realize is that we enable them, and they need to find their own feet, right? They need to hit the bottom of that rock, or hit rock bottom, so to speak. And they need to find their own way. Yeah, because if we enable them, if we keep trying to save them, we stump their growth, because we have to grow as well. So I needed to let him go. And I did many, many years later because we were always in touch. And he's been in and out of the system quite a bit, but he's finally making amends. But I had to kick him. I had to shut the door. I really had to shut the door. But I love him for having been in my life. And this is the thing. Regardless, even the last one in Florida, but regardless of what I've been through with any of my exes, I still love them. Because how can I not? Right? People remain very, very bitter in what they do or what they've been through. But when you forgive and you love that experience, you love that person for having been in your life, you let go of that anger, you let go of all these negative emotions. But for me, that part in Holland was the catalyst to my healing journey, because that's when I rolled into Reiki and all the holistic healing. And I was really like a sponge ball, because I also studied the emotional freedom technique, EFT, which is so powerful. It's such a simple, that's tapping out the emotions of the experience. And that's so powerful. And I studied to be a meditation teacher. I studied holistic nutrition, and many, many other different healing modalities. And so that was the start of my healing journey.
That's so interesting. It's such an evolved mindset, because it's true. When you look back on your life, there's so many things that were bad, but when you have time that passes, you realize it makes you grow. It's a way of forgiving and just getting better. It's very, very well said. The one thing that's very interesting and very key about our development too are those role models or heroes. Who was a hero for you? Who was somebody that you admired that made you better?
There's several people. I think my mom is my hero. And I say that because she's always kept me very, very grounded. So I have the best of both worlds. I always say, with one foot I'm in the earthly, I'm balanced, and with one foot I'm in the spiritual, where I just fly around and I channel with many masters. And So I'm so glad. Like I said, my mom has always been there for me. She's like my best friend. She's like my sister. She was very strict growing up. Oh my gosh! I mean, when I got into a fight with her, I'd be sitting in that room, as a teenager, right? And I would be sitting in the room thinking, oh my God, how am I going to apologize to my mom? Oh my gosh, And it took me sometimes a day to go up to her and apologize because she was super, super strict. When I grew up, and I'm sure that's the same for you. We used to do many house chores, and we used to make dinner, and that was normal. In this day and age, it's a little bit different. So I'm glad I grew up during, the 80s and the 90s. But like I said, she's always been there for me, regardless of what I've been through. Although sometimes I did shield her from the things that happened because I told her, what, it was my monkey to carry, not yours. These were my experiences. And she understood that. And even though when I was younger, we didn't always see eye to eye, she's changed so much as well. She now accepts me as I am, and I accept her as she is. And does she believe in all that I do? No, she doesn't, but it doesn't make me love her any less.
So let me ask you this. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet?
That's like a trick question. It's a really good question, Joe. Who would I really like to meet? Yeah. No, I honestly, I don't know.
Is there anybody from your past that may not be around right now that you would like to run into that would be good and cathartic? Maybe we do it that way.
Yeah, but if I've been asked this question before, and I could say my dad, but my dad is sometimes I see him in my dreams, or I know when he's around. So, but it would be nice to sit with, have a conversation with him. And it's something I've written about as well, because he was a Rosicrucian. And so he was part of the AMRC back in the 80s. And I never knew what a Rosicrucian was. I do remember when I was 16, I wrote a letter to the Rosicrucian Order in Holland, in The Hague, saying that they killed my dad, and I was really upset about it, And in that letter, I remember writing, how can you tell someone that they can cure themselves when there is medication, right? My dad needed his medication, and he refused to take it. And when I popped that through the letterbox, I made sure to get on my bike and bike away as quickly as possible. But now that I understand the Rosicrucians, because the Rosicrucians talk about alchemy, and I talk a lot about alchemy, and it was only that I recently found out when I was writing my book. I was like, oh my gosh, everything's clicking, because I work a lot with the Ascended Master Saint Germain. And alchemy is really about turning lead into gold. But it's really transforming the heaviness, the lead of yourself, into the brilliance of the light that you are, to enlighten yourself, right? You lighten the burden, that's what you do. And that's transformation. And I was really blown away when I read about the history of the Rosicrucians, because we have like Thomas Jefferson, Leonardo da Vinci, there was, of course, Saint Germain lived many lifetimes, but many of these were Rosicrucians.
The one thing, too, that I think we learned even over the pandemic was how instrumental art has been to us, whether it's reading or, movie, film, whatever. What art in your life has been instrumental? When you were growing up, what was the book and the album? What was the art that really moved you?
There have been several books. As a child, as a child it was different, right? Because I read I read kids' books. But many instrumental books. The one book that I really loved is it's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah, I actually live with 3 generations of women, and they do Reiki, and they're very spiritual, and my mother-in-law actually recommended, and I read it. It's a wonderful book.
And I still have it. It's very, very yellow now. I have it. And other one that is very old, and I've read it, and I really like him because my dad liked him, is Dimino.
Yeah.
And he wrote several books, including The Greatest Salesman in the World. And that was like my dad's little Bible. And he wrote many of the verses, changing them. And he said to both my sister and I like, make sure that you read this in the morning in silence and in the evening aloud for 30 days. Every verse, like 30 days. My mom was not happy with that. She's like, you can't do that. And my dad's name was Ignace. And she goes, Ignace, you cannot do that. They're kids. They shouldn't be meditating. And my sister and I did it. And I look back, I still have that book, the exercise book. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, you know what? It's actually, and this was written in the 1980s, 1988, 87, 88 to be precise. And I look back and I'm thinking, you know what? It's actually amazing. Dimino is amazing.
Throughout your life, you've learned quite a bit. I mean, you've told me so many tales already. We all gain wisdom throughout our lives, and I'm curious, if you were to have a dream tonight and run into your 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version a piece of advice based on the wisdom and the roads that you've been down, what would you tell your young version?
I can tell you this much. She'd probably turn around and roll her eyes, but, walk off. But, yeah, she would. But I would say that everything that she's been through, to see all our experiences with gratitude and appreciation, and no matter how hard life may get, to not take it out on yourself. That's something that I did. And to look in the mirror and see that you're a beautiful person, because every single being on this planet is beautiful. We don't always see it because we're so cloaked. And just to live her life fully and presently in her most authentic, and in her most wholesome nature, her most authentic self, and to not be ashamed of anything that she's been through. And to not fear to hurt people, not to be used as a doormat, because life is really beautiful. And I mean, I was a slow turtle, and like I said, if I were to tell my 20-year-old something that now, she'd just walk off and think, oh man, she's nuts.
So let's get to the essence of who you are. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your clients, colleagues, but you ultimately live your life. You're in control of your existence. Who do you think you are? What's your perception of who you are?
Funny you mentioned that. I wrote about that, actually. Everyone sees me differently. Everyone has a different perspective of who I am. And it's like, oh, does anybody really know you? Well, it doesn't matter if they know you. What is important that you understand who you are, and that you live your life according to who you believe yourself to be. Without restrictions, without all these labels of who society dictates you to be. No, it's about standing in your own truth. And it's something that I've had to learn because I never dared to speak my mind. Now I speak my mind, but not in an egotistical way, but with respect towards others. But I'm not even worried about what they think of me. It doesn't bother me. And I think that's really about standing in your own I am power. And people know exactly what they get with me, because I will always say it like it is. I do that in business as well, because that's the best way to be. And I wouldn't have been promoted a couple of weeks ago if I hadn't worked so hard and just spoke my truth in every single meeting, and just, I'm just my most authentic self.
So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, your services, anything revolving around your world, where's the best place for them to go?
You can go to my website, powersoulhealing.com. And then I'm also in Instagram and Facebook under Universal Light Warriors.
Wonderful. This has been great. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for taking a minute out. Have a great 2023.
Well, yeah, you too. Enjoy 2023. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing year. Actually, it's going to be a very transformative year for many, many people.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, spirituality, business, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube or Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.